Right, you asked for it. A deep dive into the life of Maria von Mörl. And wow, even before I even started looking at the sources, her story, it just grabs you.
It really does, yeah. Her life is fascinating, really.
Especially for, for devout Catholics.
Right.
She's someone, she resonates so deeply.
Mm-hmm.
So let's dive into it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Trace her journey from, childhood suffering to these profound mystical experiences she had.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is, how it all kind of unfolds, right? Her life, right from the beginning, was intertwined with, physical pain.
Yeah.
And then this deep, spiritual yearning.
Mm-hmm.
She was born in 1812 in Kultern, Germany, which is now part of Italy.
Oh, okay.
And her early years, they were challenging, to say the least.
Yeah, it's almost hard to imagine, the sources describe her as being plagued by illness from the time she was 5 years old.
Wow.
And then, just as she's entering her teenage years, she loses her mother during childbirth.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's just tragedy after tragedy, it seems.
And not only that, not only does she experience this profound loss, but she's also then thrust into this role of caretaker for 8 younger siblings.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, and some biographers even suggest that her father was, sadly neglectful.
I don't know.
Possibly struggling with alcoholism and even abusive towards Maria.
Wow, that's awful.
Yeah, it's a very kind of bleak picture of her early home life.
Yeah, but it makes it even more amazing, how her faith really shines through in all of this, right? There are these accounts of her intense devotion to the Eucharist from a young age, even fainting from the sheer emotion of receiving her first communion.
At 10 years old.
10 years old. It's just incredible. It seems like her spirit was already deeply connected to the divine.
Yeah, this early piety, it seems to kind of set the stage for what's to come, because around the age of 20, Maria begins to experience these really extraordinary ecstatic states, some lasting for incredibly long periods. We're talking over 36 hours.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, I was looking at the account of Corpus Christi in 1832.
Okay.
Imagine, receiving communion at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
And then remaining, completely absorbed in ecstatic prayer, kneeling until noon the next day.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it's a real testament to the depth of her spiritual experience.
Definitely.
And it's around this time that a key figure enters her life.
Okay.
Her confessor.
Oh, good.
Father Capistran, a Franciscan friar.
Okay.
Initially, quite cautious
I would imagine
about these extraordinary events, as you might expect, but he becomes this constant presence, right? Kind of guiding her through these uncharted waters.
Yeah, yep.
And these experiences, they weren't limited to just ecstasies either.
Oh, really?
There are accounts of Maria exhibiting, foreknowledge, and even prophecy.
So she had visions of the future.
Yeah, it's like her connection to the spiritual realm was really kind of, opening up in all these multifaceted ways.
Right, but then things take a really dramatic turn.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say?
For sure.
February 4th, 1834, Maria receives the stigmata.
Wow.
The wounds of Christ on her palms and feet.
Yeah.
It's just this moment catapults her into the public eye.
The way her biographer, Johann Joseph von Goris, describes it, it's so vivid. Yeah. Maria's initially bewildered by the bleeding, and she wipes her hands with this childish astonishment,
Yeah.
Not even comprehending what's happening to her.
Wow.
And these stigmata, they were really pronounced, round wounds.
Okay.
About 2 inches in diameter, present on both sides of her hands and feet.
It's hard to even imagine.
Yeah.
That must have been. What was it like to see that? What was it?
Well, and what's even more remarkable, right, is that they would bleed profusely on Thursdays and Fridays.
Oh, wow.
Forming a crust for the rest of the week, but there was never any sign of infection.
Wow.
Yeah. It defied, all medical understanding at the time. And you can imagine word of this spreads like wildfire. Tens of thousands of pilgrims, despite attempts by authorities to, control the crowds, they flocked to Kultern to witness the, stigmatized virgin as she became known.
Wow. It's even the Prince Bishop of Trent, who investigated her case personally, acknowledged her, undeniable piety.
Yeah.
But he stopped short of officially declaring her a saint.
Well, yeah.
It's even the church was cautious, but couldn't deny
it.
What was happening.
Exactly.
It's incredible.
And amidst all this attention, all this scrutiny, Maria, guided by Father Capistran, decides to join the Third Order of St. Francis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, embracing this life, dedicated to prayer and service as a lay sister.
Wow, that's pretty amazing, given everything that was happening to her.
Yeah, it's a testament to her humility,
Right.
and her desire to live out her faith.
In a simple way.
In a very kind of simple, dedicated way.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is even more remarkable when you consider, the profound nature of her ongoing mystical experiences.
Right. I mean, we had these accounts from people who witnessed her in ecstasy, right?
Right.
Figures like Gores and Clement Brentano, and they offer these incredibly vivid descriptions that really, bring her story to life.
Gores talks about her angelic appearance during these states.
Wow.
And Brentano describes her body seemingly lengthening.
Wow, that's pretty wild.
Yeah, but what I find particularly touching is that upon returning from these, intense spiritual experiences, she would hide her hands.
Really?
With this kind of childlike innocence, like a little girl who has gotten ink on them, Gores puts it.
Oh, wow, that's really beautiful.
It's those little glimpses into her personality that make her so relatable,
So human.
So human,
yeah.
And despite the extraordinary nature of these events,
right?
The accounts all agree, right? They all agree on certain qualities about her.
Like what?
Humility, right. Innocence, and this just profound, unwavering piety.
Yeah, it's this consistency across decades.
Yeah.
From various observers.
That makes it so compelling.
Right.
There's this thread of authenticity that runs through all of it.
Mm-hmm. And those qualities become even more poignant when you really start to dig into the content of her mystical experiences.
Exactly.
Particularly her mystical agonies.
Yeah.
These events often centered around the Passion of Christ, particularly on Fridays, right? It's like she was reliving his suffering in this really visceral way.
Brentano gives this incredibly detailed account of witnessing Maria seemingly relive Christ's death on the cross.
Wow.
Yeah, undergoing these physical transformations.
Oh, my goodness.
And experiencing agony that mirrors the crucifixion.
Wow.
The scene he describes, it's both gripping and just heart-wrenching.
Wow.
It culminates in a state resembling death, only for her to eventually return to this, gentle, childlike demeanor.
It's amazing, how she could go through something so intense and come back to this place of peace.
Right. It speaks to the paradoxical nature of her life, right? This intensity of the mystical alongside the ordinariness of her daily life.
Yeah. And then that daily existence takes a turn, right? In 1841, she moves to the Franciscan convent, living in a separate dwelling.
Right next to the church.
Next to the church. Wow. And, I mean, it was a move to provide her with some peace and quiet, I imagine.
Exactly.
But the pilgrims, they kept coming.
Oh, yeah. They were drawn to her reputation,
For holiness?
For holiness, yeah.
Even with restricted access.
I mean, Bishop Vincent Tizzani describes being, moved to tears by the authenticity of her experience.
Oh,
and Louis Claris, a Protestant, was so deeply affected by witnessing her state that he converted to Catholicism.
Wow.
So these firsthand accounts, right, spanning over 3 decades, it really defies any simple explanation.
It really does.
But this is just the beginning, Marie's story doesn't end here.
Oh, I can't wait to hear the rest.
Yeah, let's do it. Even amidst this, seeming peace in this convent she was living in Maria's life, it wasn't over.
Right.
Not even close. In fact, she's about to face what some might consider her most harrowing trial.
Yeah, you're talking about those events in September 1867, right?
Exactly.
When she endured those just intense spiritual attacks, like she was battling, demonic forces.
Yeah.
I have to admit, reading those accounts gave me chills.
Yeah, it's a very chilling chapter in her story.
Yeah.
She describes, seeing demons, hearing their blasphemies, even their boasts about controlling the Pope.
Oh, wow.
Desecrating holy places.
That's disturbing.
It's enough to make you question, the very nature of good and evil, you know?
Right. And what I found really unsettling was how these attacks, they kind of seem to echo the turmoil of the time,
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
The invasion of the Papal States, the political upheaval across Europe.
Right.
It's like her struggles were mirroring this larger societal conflict.
It is a fascinating parallel, right? This idea that even those who, dedicate their lives to prayer and contemplation. Yeah. They're not immune to the forces at play in the world.
And the world around them, yeah. And it kind of makes her triumph, her eventual triumph, all the more powerful,
It does.
Because she does triumph.
Yeah.
She regains her peace.
Right.
Her ability to receive communion.
Yeah. It speaks to that resilience. Yeah. Her spirit, that unwavering faith, even in the face of real darkness.
Right. And that resilience becomes even more evident as we kind of approach the final chapter of her life, the fall of 1867. Maria's health begins to decline pretty rapidly. Yeah. And she even predicts her own passing.
That's right.
Says she won't survive the winter.
It's a real kind of poignant beauty to that isn't there. Yeah. This acceptance of her own mortality. Yeah. Almost as if she was granted a glimpse, into God's plan.
Yeah, definitely. And her illness progresses and she grows weaker, unable to keep food down.
Right.
Her suffering just intensifies.
And I was struck by her statement that she would know death was near when everything on her became white, wow. Referencing the fading of her stigmata.
Wow, that's eerie and beautiful at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. And so on January 11th, 1868, just 2 hours after receiving Holy Communion, Maria von Mörl passes away peacefully.
Wow, a fitting end to a life so intertwined with the Eucharist.
With the Eucharist.
Yeah, that connection to Christ's sacrifice.
Yeah. And what's even more remarkable is how those present described her appearance after death.
Okay.
Serene, dressed in white like a bride.
Wow.
Her face just radiating this peace and joy.
Wow, so beautiful.
Yeah, it's a real testament to the transformative power of faith. Yeah. That promise of eternal life that is so central to the Catholic belief.
Yeah, and the funeral procession itself.
Right.
With those huge crowds of mourners.
It just speaks volumes, about the impact she had on people.
Yeah.
Both those who knew her and those who, had just heard the stories.
So, what does this all mean for us?
Yeah.
For those of us who are drawn to her story all these centuries later, right. What lessons can we take away?
Yeah, what can we learn from this woman who, endured so much, yet never lost her faith, her humility, her deep connection to God?
I mean, that's the question, isn't it? What resonates most with you when you reflect on Maria's life?
Yeah, what stands out?
Yeah, it really does make you think, her life, it wasn't, a fairy tale.
Right.
But it was just so full of grace.
It was.
And it makes me think about how, sometimes we can kind of compartmentalize faith, right? Like it's separate from our daily struggles.
Oh, absolutely.
But Maria's story, it suggests something different, don't you think?
It really does, yeah. It challenges us to see faith, not as this escape from suffering, but as the source of strength within it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, think about those moments, when she emerged from these agonizing ecstasies and she had that childlike demeanor. Yeah. Almost as if, her faith had distilled her pain into something just pure and simple.
Yeah, it's a powerful image, and for those listening who want to learn more, who want to really dive deeper into her life, I would highly recommend seeking out the writings of those who knew her personally. Okay. They offer such just rich, detailed accounts.
They do. They bring you right there.
Yeah.
You can really, almost step back in time and encounter her in a very tangible way.
And, I mean, if you ever find yourself in Caltern, visiting, her memorial sites.
Absolutely.
It's a way to connect with her legacy, in a physical space.
It's a pilgrimage, yeah.
It's a pilgrimage.
A way to honor her life.
Yeah.
And maybe even, draw inspiration for your own journey.
It's just amazing to think, centuries later.
I know.
Her story still resonates so strongly. Still offers comfort and guidance.
It really
to those seeking that deeper connection to their faith.
Maria von Mörl, she wasn't a theologian. She wasn't a scholar.
Right.
She was a simple woman who lived out her faith.
With this incredible conviction.
Yeah.
And in a world that, that can feel so chaotic.
Oh, absolutely.
Uncertain.
Yeah.
That's a message worth holding on to.
It is. It really is.
So until our next deep dive.
Yeah.
Keep exploring. Keep questioning.
Keep searching.
Keep that flame of faith burning brightly.